Joining us now are Cindy Crawford, model and entrepreneur, and Dr. William Lee, President and CEO of the Angiogenesis Foundation, to discuss beauty from the inside out.
I'm Dr. William Lee, and it's a pleasure to be at the 5th International Vatican Conference. I'm here with model and entrepreneur Cindy Crawford. Cindy, welcome.
Thank you. And friend, Dr. Lee. We've known each other for several years now, and I've learned a lot from you. So I'm happy to be here with you as well.
It's a real pleasure. And as we always talk about, life is really about living well and living healthy. And I had a couple of questions I thought would be a great way for us to have a conversation. You started modeling as a teenager and you still look luminous. So what's the biggest factor? Workouts, sleep, healthy diet, meditation? What gives you the kind of calmness and quality of life and spirituality that you actually have?
You know, I always say the secret is there are no secrets. Like we all know, yes, all those things that you mentioned, fitness, eating well, getting enough sleep, not smoking, all of those things add to, I think, a more well-rounded, feeling good experience. But what I really preach is that it's cumulative. You know, you can't go to the gym for 1 week and notice a big difference. But when you live a healthy lifestyle, when you choose a healthy diet, when you drink enough water, you lead a meaningful life, you have meaningful relationships, all of that is cumulative, and it does start to show on your face.
Yeah, well, you know what happens, the fires that you feel, juggling life actually are a microcosm of what happens inside our body. And so I think that the whole idea of the totality of health on the outside and what we experience on the outside is also mirrored by the gears that are turning on the inside. And, we've talked about this before as really this whole idea of balance. What do you think about balance in life? How do you think about that?
Well, every year my New Year's resolution is to balance and rebalance because, life changes. So sometimes you're putting out a fire here, as you mentioned, and you're neglecting to water your garden over here. And it's taking the time maybe on a yearly basis, New Year's or back summer, whenever, or spring cleaning like we are right now, like maybe that's a time to look at your life and have that rebalancing. And I think that we've talked about before, what you were talking about is it's internal as well as external. And I think if my high school biology serves me right, that's called homeostasis, right?
Right. I love to hear you say homeostasis because it's one of those terms that I think we're not familiar enough with it, but it's a very simple concept, which is that there's checks and balances to everything. And what we really need to try to do inside and out is to keep that balance actually going so that we are kind of in that Goldilocks zone of life where things just kind of work out. If you stress too much on one side or the other, you're out of balance and therefore out of homeostasis.
Right. And we know that stress. I mean, they say stress is a killer. And, whenever my husband says that, I'm like, cancel that, don't say that. But we do have to work on, I think managing our stress is probably the single most important thing that we can do for our health.
Well, that brings up a really good next point, which is, we've all gone through a pretty tough year. I think humans on this planet, and it's really just another step in our journey through life. Let's talk about some key steps or key points and tips that's worked through the years for you. What are some of those things that allow you to manage your life better?
Well, as we said, this has been an unimaginable year for all of us. I remember when they started, kind of stay-at-home orders, and we thought it was going to be for 2 weeks, and I started doing puzzles and cleaning my closet. But as I realized that this was going to be a longer situation, I really used that time to develop my meditation practice. And I think people have found those are where the hidden blessings of this last year, was that we were kind of forced to look at ourselves and our life in a different way.
Well, the other thing is that stress actually lowers our immunity. And so one of the things that I think many of us have tried to grapple with is how to actually build our inner strength and how to actually build our health. And we've had to do this by managing stress. And a lot of us are still having stress. So I think this idea of meditation and centering becomes really so important.
Right. And it doesn't have to be meditation. It can be whatever works for you. It can be a long walk. It can be chilling out to a silly TV show. I mean, believe me, I'm not above doing that. I think one of the techniques that I use, and I actually was just talking to my daughter about this last night. She had a long day, was like, we all have troubles. We don't always know what other people are going through. I try to put mine down at the end of the day. I can put it on the floor next to my bed or leave it somewhere because I can pick it back up in the morning. And I think giving myself that relief, even just for a few hours, and just putting it in God's hands, that for me enables me to wake up in the morning with a fresh perspective.
And that's really, I think, really helpful is for us to renew ourselves. Now, one thing that I find is a way to engage in what I find pleasurable is actually eating, because, we are what we eat, and food is another way that many of us have been thinking about how to stay healthy. Now, obviously, there are food dietary habits that are not that healthy, but let's talk a little bit about food and health. How do you think about food in your life and healthiness?
Well, I agree with you. Food is one of life's greatest pleasures. So I would never want to deprive. I don't trust someone who doesn't enjoy food, but it's mindful eating. It's not just like numbing out with like a bag of chips that before you know it, you're at the bottom of the bag. It's like making healthy choices. For me, my goal is to try to be 80% good 80% of the time, because I feel that's achievable and I don't beat myself up too much. But I also, every year, I try to incorporate one positive change. And I think actually you are responsible for one of them. You got me on the green tea kick when I was introduced to you through your work with cancer, because you know that I lost a brother to leukemia. And so it's like you can get inundated with, oh, you should do this, you should blueberries, kale, blah, blah, blah. Find one or two legit voices to follow. And if something resonates with you, just make a tiny change, one tiny change each year. That's doable.
Well, that's what I've always loved in our friendship is how practical you are. And, anybody can actually make a single change. The other thing that I think is worth just pointing out is that food isn't really about some super magic bullet solution. Food is intimate. It connects us with our childhood, what we smelled coming out of our mom's kitchens, our family, our community, and our cultures. Because no matter where you come from, we all have an origin story, and that culture almost always had food at the center of it. What's kind of centers you from a food perspective?
Oh, I think just mealtime with families. I think it's the community of sharing food for me. Is what makes, I could be eating anything. It's eating it with other people. It's unloading your day. It's sharing, it's telling stories. That to me is what a truly good meal is.
There's so much pressure out there in the world, no matter what it is that you do professionally, or whether you are stressed out from family or work or economics. And for you, I think that, there's been so much insight that you've gained about the pressure on external beauty. I mean, you've been doing this for your whole life, your whole career. How do you actually keep a level head and stay grounded? And what do you know now that you wish you knew when you were 20?
Yeah, it's interesting because, obviously, hopefully you do gain wisdom with age. And I think what I've really come to terms with is, how do we treat our friends with compassion, with love? We're not hard on them. So to approach ourselves with the same kind of grace that we would talk to our best friend, we wouldn't say to our best friend, you sure look rough today. But, so many times we face the mirror in the morning and all we do is be down on ourselves. So it's like, why can't we love ourselves in the same way that we love our friends?
So in closing, thank you, Cindy, for joining us and for sharing your wisdom, your insights, your experiences. You are an inspiration to everyone in the world.
Oh, thank you.